officially welcome to this week's Writing Workshop Wednesdays. As you might know, I just started up again last week after a bit of hiatus, I guess you could say. So it's so great to see you all back here, some old friends and some new faces, or I guess I should say new names because you don't all have your videos on. So yeah, everybody gets something to write with. This is Writing Workshop Wednesdays, which is all about using more words in our nature journal and noticing the stories that are happening all around us. So last week, we focused on stream of consciousness writing and this kind of free writing based on some prompts. So today is going to continue on a similar theme. Could we get a suggestion from the audience about a topic to write about for the first 5-minute free writing? So, and again, this is a completely no pressure, no judgment zone. And this is, oh, we got a suggestion for seeds. So when I say go, we can write about that topic. And so it can't, the point right now is not to write anything that you would share with anybody. I mean, you can if you want to. But the point is just to start listening to your own thoughts, get them out on paper. And okay, some more people have just joined. So where is my train of thought? Yeah, so right now it's not about the product, it's just about the process and listening to our own thoughts, being able to write whatever comes into your mind. So if there's a different topic that you really want to do, that's okay, you can do that. And so right now we'll start with the topic of seeds, which is our suggestion from Ermi. Am I saying your name correctly? Yeah, but if your mind wanders and you start thinking about something else, then just follow wherever it goes. So get something to write with, 5 minutes of free writing, stream of consciousness, no pressure on the topic of seeds. So we'll start that right now.
What you doing, kitty? Where you going, Kit Kat? Hey, little stripy tail. Seed. I thought you said feet.
Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, so that was just 5 minutes of free writing stream of consciousness on the topic of seeds, or feet, if that was what you heard. That's also okay. And I'm so curious what everybody ended up writing about. So before we go, so that was kind of like a little warm up to get us started. I have some more prompts for us, but first, does anyone want to share anything about what you wrote or how that went for you? And we'll have more time at the end for discussion too, and for sharing. So if you do, raise your hand, either physically in the video camera or click the raise hand button, or you can type in the chat. And if nobody wants to share right now, then we'll just move on to the next prompt. Okay, so the next three I picked out for us today. So the first one is, what is something from nature? Wait, let me think about what order I want to do these. Yeah, okay. Yeah, what's something from nature that you feel grateful for today or that is bringing you joy today? So we'll have 5 minutes about that one, and then we'll go to the next topic. So, ready, set, go. And I'm not going to put, I'm pausing the timer. The timer is paused. I'm not going to put that up because I noticed that made it a little bit harder for me to keep an eye on people coming into the waiting room. So if anybody, I noticed some people in the waiting room during the last writing time. I'm not sure how long you were there. So if it was a while, I apologize. But I'm just going to type in the chat what time is the next one will end. So timer is going back on right now. Oh, and just like the last time, it's going to be completely stream of consciousness. Just write whatever comes into your head and wherever your thoughts take you. Okay, put down your pencils. And if you just got here, we just did 5 minutes of free writing on the topic of what in nature are you grateful for? What brings you joy today? So our next prompt is going to be the opposite because I think it's important to pay attention to what we're grateful for and what brings us joy, especially at least in the northern hemisphere where I am, as our days are getting shorter and shorter this time of year. Um, but it's also important to acknowledge that things are not happy all the time. And there are some things that we are not grateful for. So the next prompt I have for you is what in nature or related to nature are you not thankful for right now? What is something that is um, sad or hard or difficult or challenging or that you wish were different from what it was? And again, if you want to write about some other topic, you're welcome to. So 5 minutes on what are you not thankful for? Okay, 10 more seconds. Okay, put down your pencils. So I think Kathy just got here. We just did 5 minutes of writing on the topic of seeds, and then 5 minutes of free writing on the topic of what in nature are you grateful for today. And then we just did 5 minutes about what in nature are you not thankful for today. So I have one more prompt for us. And then we can have time to share or come up with more prompts. But before we go on, does anyone want to share anything about what you wrote about so far or how it just went for you? Oh, and one more thing. Remember to breathe, because I noticed when I was writing, I noticed I was holding my breath because I was just trying to write as much as I can, and that's not good. So remember to breathe and not hold your breath while you're writing. Yeah, go ahead. Kay Shu, would you like to, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to share, or you can write something in the chat.
Hi, thank you. I didn't write much, but what I have for what I'm thankful for is flowers. I love flowers. They make the world full of color. Trees are pretty too. And what in nature am I not grateful for? I wrote mosquitoes. I know it would be bad if they were all gone, but I think most people would agree that they're annoying. And that's
Great. Thank you for sharing.
it.
Yeah, so I wrote that I'm grateful for all of the leaves that are falling off the trees right now, and all the colors. We didn't get quite the amount of color that we normally have, but this morning it was still just so beautiful, and we had a blue sky set again, so it made me very happy. And then I wrote that I'm not thankful for it seems like over the past year, there have been a lot of trees getting cut down in my neighborhood. I don't know if it's just people have been home and so they notice that it's like something that needs to be done. But it makes me sad because I think that our trees are often seen as just kind of like an object, but they're not because they're alive. And oh, I didn't even get to write this part, but I was also thinking about how then people like take out the stump too. And it's like you can never tell that it was even there. So that's what I was thankful for and not thankful for today. And okay. Hi, Mary. Okay, so I have one more prompt that I decided ahead of time. So for the next 5 minutes, what is something that you've observed in nature recently that you haven't written down yet? So this is a good one if you're putting it the first prompt so far, I just put them on a piece of paper, but this one would be good to put into your nature journal if you have one, because I think sometimes we observe things, at least I know I observe things in nature, and I'm thinking to myself like, oh, I need to make a nature journal entry about this, like I got to make a nature journal page about this, but it becomes this like huge thing in my head that is like, oh, it's got to be perfect, like I got to do it just the right way, and I set up these barriers in my mind that I end up sometimes just not even doing it at all, and then I end up not remembering the event that I observed and forgetting about it. So what's something that you've observed in nature recently, or an experience that you've had in nature recently that you would like to remember, but you haven't written it down yet, or maybe you've never told anybody about it yet? So 5 minutes starting now. 10 seconds. Okay, put your pencils down. Okay, so if we have time, we could do some more writing prompts, but right now I want to open it up to sharing and reflecting on the 20 minutes of writing that we all just did. If you were following along, we all just wrote for 20 solid minutes. So I guess my first question is, how do you guys feel after doing that writing and be able to just purely express yourself with no filter? I mean, sometimes we put filters on ourselves, but you know, the goal is just to write whatever comes into your head. Any thoughts about how the experience of doing these writing prompts was for you?
Maybe I would like to share.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, it was so interesting. I feel like I've kind of come to like a full circle, and I picked up on what when you say listening to your own thoughts, and then and again, not having a lot of intention. I just love this experience of just expressing freely, even again with seeds in mind. And right away, I had a sense of hope when it comes to writing about seeds. And then, and then it kind of moved into something like, whoa, do I see a weed coming out from there, or is really something still beautiful? It's still all live, all that thought came in, and then I really felt the sense of joy about everything has its own beauty. I don't need to decide whether it's a weed. I remember I did that one point. I actually even took a picture of something along the road and posted it on the Facebook, and say, is this a weed or a true plant? But I've noticed that just right now, there's this shift in thought. Gosh, they are all beautiful in their own way. So that's something I have really picked up. And even when you talked about writing something about the joy of nature versus something challenging, and I again the joy of seeing a bird recently through just different lenses, and I didn't know what kind of a bird, and then my brother told me it was a scrub jay, and even talking about it, I feel such joy. And then about the challenging part, and then I thought about being in Los Angeles. We're so dry, and I felt very sad about the dry land. And then it kind of moved into more about how creative we are. I'm now seeing more and more of plants that are very drought resistant. And once again, it come back to again this beauty. Again, it has its own beauty. And then even led me to thinking about then what can I do? What is my part? So maybe I'll try my darn best to save water the way I know how. and and then again, bringing back to this sense of hope. And so even with something challenging, I just felt like there's still always that sense of hope. So that's really my wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Mary. Yeah, because these prompts were pretty open-ended, but I love how it's, the seed took, that started us as a seed of a thought, but you were able to write on that and like really get to some deeper thoughts and about the experiences that you've had and just the meaning that you're creating for yourself out of those experiences. Yeah, in a way that seems pretty profound for you. So it just started with a simple idea, but following your own thoughts, you were able to get to someplace pretty amazing.
Thank you. It's like magic to me now. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Would anybody else like to share? What did you write about, or how did this go for you? Kim?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I found a growing sense. So your first question was, where did this take you? And I feel like it cultivated a sense of awareness of what's currently right outside my window and how that's impacting my thoughts. I'm in the Midwest, and it's a very beautiful time here right now. But what's also coming is a lot of gray and cold temperatures. And so coming from what I'm grateful for to what I'm the opposite, what I'm not excited about or not feeling grateful for, was really powerful for me, because I wrote down like making space for gray, and recognizing that gray and the cold and the things that are to come are things that I don't have to dread necessarily, but I can kind of find some connection in them as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Like I was saying, I think it's important for us to acknowledge the things that we're not excited about. We always talk about nature journaling, how we get a sense of curiosity and wonder, and and paying attention to the things that are all around us. But yeah, sometimes there are things that we're not excited about, and we need to also get right about that and get that out of the way and process that. And I think that can be kind of cathartic, if especially if we're just trying to hold it in. So thank you for sharing what you were writing about. Anyone else? Okay, Shu.
Sorry, suddenly got really nervous.
You're good. No judgment here.
Thanks. I again didn't write much, but because I haven't observed much recently, but I noticed something I tend to get kind of fixated on is the sky. So I wrote the way the sky changes colors differently depending on where you are. Like it could be very dull 20 minutes away, but where you are, it might be really bright and colorful. And that's it.
I really love that observation.
Yeah.
The sky is something that we all experience. The sky is something that's a part of nature that we can observe no matter where we are. And the sky seems so huge and so endless, but also, just like you said, it's different in all our different locations, and it's always changing. And yeah, sometimes it's raining 2 miles away from you, and then where you are, it's sunny, or vice versa. So I think that's a really great observation. And thank you for sharing. Christiane, great to see you
Hi.
again.
Hi, nice to be able to join this workshop again. I'm very happy that you continue this enterprise, and I have I think a similar experience. I had a similar experience like Mary. I could write the first prompt about the seeds, and then what are you grateful about, were actually the seeds, because here in I'm living here in Germany, and it is pretty cold. It's getting pretty cold the last 2 days, and I found some cones and twigs with little seeds on beneath the leaves and so on, and that was actually what I was thankful about. So yes, it was a nice flow to write about this two things. And then I could write a little haiku about this experience to make it something shorter. It was very delightful. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I like how that seeds flowed into the next question that ended up being what you're thankful for. Now I'm wondering, are there any particular kinds of seeds that you're thankful for, or that you're looking forward to seeing them grow? You can answer that if you want to, but you don't have to. And Kim, I see, is your hand up from before, or do you want to say something again?
It's up from before. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I have to lower hand. My bad. Yes, it was from before.
You're good. Okay. Would anyone else like to share who hasn't yet? So here's what I wrote for my recent observation. Just this morning, I saw a pileated woodpecker in the forest, and that's the biggest woodpecker that lives where I live. They're about the size of a crow, if you're not familiar with them. So first, I saw a little downy woodpecker, small one, and then as it flew away, I noticed that it sounded like it was a sound that its wings made as it flew away. And then right after that, I heard what sounded like almost the same sound, but louder and a little bit slower. It was like, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And so I looked, and then there was a pileated woodpecker, which is the really big one. And I was writing how they're not quiet. Like owls are silent when they fly, but these ones aren't, because they're not hunters. They don't need to be sneaking up on anyone. They don't care if anybody hears them. So also, I just want to say, I'm paraphrasing what I actually wrote, because when I write stream of consciousness, the grammar is not important. I have like run-on sentences, things that are like skipped around that don't make sense. So feel free to let yourself do that when you're just writing, because what we're focusing on, the kind of writing that we're focusing right now, is purely just to get our thoughts out and to process your thinking and to get your observations recorded. So grammar, run-on sentences, any of that stuff doesn't really matter right now. So feel free to let yourself do that. Ermi, I see your hand. First, I'm going to read Raybondo's comment. Raybondo says in the chat, what I was grateful for was a slug, and what you were not grateful for is construction. You wrote construction in my garden. Do you want to elaborate on any of that? If you want to, we'll come back, but first we'll go over to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to share really quickly, what I really liked the last prompt that you had. And so I wrote about a spider that we'd seen, and my husband and I saw it in the yard and talked about it. And it somehow hadn't made it into my journal yet because it wasn't a big event. It was just a spider in quotes, and not one that we had not seen before. So that was it. But it was good to put it down anyways.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you got the chance to then put this down. And that's part of why I asked this question as a prompt, because there are so many little things that happen. You know, like I was saying before, sometimes we build it up in our minds. It's like a big thing, like, oh, we've got to journal this perfect page, and then we just don't get to it. But sometimes it's also something small that we don't necessarily think of. It's like, oh, I need to put this into my journal. But the more that we observe, you know, the more that we'll notice in the future, and then the more also that we can notice patterns. You know, the more observations, the more data, the more stories, then we can, you know, look back in the future and say like, oh, how did things change over time, and how much did I notice this thing happening? So there's really nothing too small of an observation that to deserve being in your nature journal if you want to record it. So thank you for sharing, Yumi. I'm glad to hear about that spider. So Rivanto, do you want to talk more about what you observed, what you wrote in the chat?
Yes. So what I was grateful for, we were coming back from a cold trip, and we were going home and we saw a slug on the wall because it was raining. It was like all transparent, brown on the top parts and darker in the middle, and it was like no color, transparent on the bottom parts, and very short antennas. As for what I wasn't, they had this public garden, and then they chopped the trees and to build a house over there in its place. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love that you wrote that you're grateful for a slug, because I think a lot of people would not think of a slug as something that they're grateful for. I mean, I agree with Keishu that mosquitoes are annoying, and you know, sometimes, you know, there are all kinds of bugs and pests out in nature, and ticks where I live are a big problem. So like sometimes those things we're not thankful for, but I think it's really amazing that you saw the slug and how it, so that made me wonder, like, what about the slug that you noticed like made you grateful for it? Yeah, and how you described how it looked kind of transparent through part of its body. I love that you noticed that, and that came to mind when you're thinking of something that you're grateful for. Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear about that garden. That's must be really disappointing. That it's like a place that you cared about, and it's like it's a community garden, so you got to you did some gardening there with other people. No.
No, it was like a public garden.
Like a
We
public
all,
park.
yeah, like a park, but it wasn't real soil or anything. It was like cloth covered with stones.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but it had loads of trees and spider webs, sadly.
Yeah, but now they cut down the trees and they're building a house there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That's I know you will miss those trees and all of the animals and the spiders that live in there.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, thanks for sharing what you wrote. Okay, we're almost out of time, so last call. Does anybody else want to share what you wrote about, or what you thought about, or were there any, when you were just following the train of your thoughts, was there anything surprising that came up? Heidi?
Hi, yeah. Starting with the prompt on seeds, I've had a recent loss, and so I was thinking about the seeds on my peace lily and how they're different than other seeds that I'm used to. Vegetables I plant, flowers I plant. These particular seeds are not a kind that I'm used to. And so when we wrote about joy or gratitude, the thoughts about my peace lily flowed into thoughts about the wind and how it's nice to feel the movement, even when I feel bodily or mentally stagnant. And so I noticed that as the prompts progressed, I was trying to get into different rivers of thought, but I was in the same stream continually. And hearing the comments about the sky and how they're different where each of us are, it occurred to me that we are also different under the same sky, and everything that I observe is filtered by me and therefore different than what someone sitting directly next to me would write or think or say. And I just wanted to thank you guys for sharing your perspectives with me.
Thank you, Heidi. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry for your loss. I love the thoughts that you're sharing. I totally agree with what you just said. Which I say this all the time, is we all have our own perspective, our own background, our own way of thinking. So even, you know, in the nature journal community, a lot of times, probably the most common thing that I see is people saying like, oh, like I see other people's nature journals and they're so beautiful and their art is so amazing. And like, you know, I feel so intimidated, you know, like, why should I even bother? But we all have our own perspective. Even if we all observe the exact same event in the exact same place, we're all going to notice different things about it. We're all going to ask different questions. We're all going to think about different things and in the bigger picture that it connects to, from the same thing that we observed. I mean, we all started with the same prompts and we all went in so many different directions. And I also really love what you said about the seed and thinking about the lilies, and then thinking about the wind and how you like feeling how the wind feels even when you feel stagnant, or you in your mind you feel like stuck, or the way that you were feeling. And I liked that because I relate to that too, and I thought that was a really great way to describe it. Sometimes if we're not in a good place, like emotionally or mentally or whatever, you know, we can, that feeling of being outside and experiencing nature, even if it's like we still kind of feel the way that we're feeling, but we're just experiencing being out there. I think at least that's how I understood, or like what I thought about what you were saying. So I thought that was a really nice way to put it. Oh, and then what you were saying about the rivers of thought all containing the same streams, that was really beautiful too. And I hope that you wrote that down. Like the way that you're thinking about your thinking and what you just wrote was really cool. And then there was one other thought. Oh, I also like how you said you were inspired by what other people were saying, and the thought about the sky, and how you took, somebody else was thinking about the sky and then you took that and brought it to your another thought. So by us doing, we started off with you know, the same prompts, but somebody went off this direction, and then one of us we can listen to it each other and what we thought about, and then say, oh yeah, and that makes me think about this, and then go off on this whole other direction. So I really like how you did that. And thank you again for sharing. Okay, so we just have a couple minutes left. I would love for everybody to take just a minute to write down what's your biggest takeaway from this session today. What did you get out of it, or what did you learn, or what did it make you think about, and how will you be able to apply this in your nature journaling in going into the future? Okay, and once you have that thought about what's your biggest takeaway and how can you apply it to your nature journaling, I would love for you all to type that into the chat. It could just be a sentence or two, but don't click enter yet. Okay, now if you've written something in the chat and you're ready, go ahead and click enter. Viewing everything as seeds, not as weeds. Writing helps me make new connections between what I already know and what's new. Nature journaling can come in different forms, different perspective, and different lens. It's about seeing, recognizing, and appreciating. I don't know what to write, but I love the sky. I love that. We can always write about the sky. My takeaway today is remembering it isn't too late to add something to my journal if I forgot about it. Yeah, just because we didn't have our journal with us right when we observed something, or maybe it's been a little while, we can always still go back and add it. Making notes in my journal to come back later and write more when I have time. Yeah, that's another really great technique too. If there's like, we want to journal or write so much about something, but we don't have time in that moment, like I just said, we can wait for later, or you can just take a couple quick notes, maybe a quick sketch just to remind yourself. And then later, when you have time back at home, you can expand on that. And then what I wrote is, and I wasn't planning this, but this is what I'm thinking about after this class today, is that sharing with each other and growing our thoughts together. It's not a competition. We can build off of each other. And I think this is important because, and I include myself in this, sometimes we might be afraid to share what we wrote or what we did, but when we do it, it can give like a next prompt to somebody else that they can help them to expand their thoughts and to inspire them. So thank you all for coming today. That's the end of our session. Thank you so much for being here. Next week is the day before Thanksgiving, right? That's already, no, that's the week after. Okay, so I think next week will just be kind of similar to this. We'll have some more writing and some more sharing. So yeah, and then the week after that will be the day before Thanksgiving. So anybody who's around that day will be taking a look at the Thanksgiving address and kind of making our own versions for the places that we live, and giving thanks to the different plants and animals and creatures. So I'll explain more about that, but I hope to see you next time, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Servanto. And I'm
Bye.
here for a couple more minutes if anybody does have a question or want to chat.